Okay, so what can we do to maintain that high-performing team?
So, yeah, I think the first thing goes down to accountability. When you hire somebody, there should be a very clear set of expectations, like we talked about before. This is what I expect you to do. This is what I expect you to do, and it's a contract between two entities. The only way to have that be anything worthwhile is to enforce those standards and expectations. And that's where accountability comes in. John Taffer, who I know you've had on the podcast as well, talks about, this is what you do, but then this is how you need to do it, and this is why. And accountability is something quantifiable, qualifiable, and verifiable. I think those are three things that they're really helpful as well.
Yeah, when I hear you talk about accountability, what I think of is standards. We talk a lot about the importance of systems and processes, but we also need to set standards for all those things so that there's an expectation, right? And that this is the aiming point, and that if you're not hitting this point, if you're not achieving this every time, then you're falling short. Because how else can you hold people accountable if they don't know what the expectation is?
Correct. And it goes down to very simple things as well. So if people are scheduled to be here at 10 o'clock and they're not here till 10:15, what does that say to the people that are there at 10 o'clock or 9:50 if there's not some sort of repercussions for being late?
Yeah, I think so. I think the two variables that play heavily into accountability, again, standards, having a list of standards, and then also having a list of policies. So this is like, okay, your hygiene isn't where we want it to be. You need to write all these expectations down. You got to paint that picture of perfection, like our man Rudy Mick mentions, in order to give these people a picture of what the job done right looks like. Otherwise, they don't know how to show up every day. They don't know what you expect from them unless you have these standards written down, you have these policies set into stone. Any other thoughts on that, or can we move to the next one?
Well, I just want to say I agree 100%. And anyone that's fired somebody, I guarantee, because I've been guilty of this before too, is did you give this person the tools and the resources they needed to succeed? And if you haven't, you look back and say, wow, I just got it wrong.
Where did I go wrong?
And you kind of feel guilty about it.
That's a great mentality in general to have whenever anything happens. Instead of, this is a great way to check your culture, right? If something goes wrong, if you develop the habit of saying, instead of saying, what did this person do wrong? And if you replace that with, what did I do wrong to not make this person be successful in the situation? How did I not support this person to the point where they went wrong, right? And
and it's not to make you feel bad about it. It's to make it so that next time that happens, you can keep that from happening again.
You're plugging holes. You're finding the weak spots, and you're constantly improving. And that's a great just habit to form. Whenever anything goes wrong, ask, what did I do wrong first? I love that. Thank you for bringing that to the table, Chris. But I guess now what we need to talk about is what to do, or the best way to, fire somebody if that has to happen.
Yeah. So going back to expectations, there needs to be a very clear understanding of what they are. And then when they're not being met, there's the accountability part. And now, okay, under what conditions, if this continues to happen, or sometimes it could be one thing that happened, depending on how serious it is, under what conditions is it no longer appropriate or responsible to keep this person around?
Okay, so how do you make sure that happens? How do you work that into your operation so it's set that way every time?
Well, that's one of the challenges too. We're all human beings, and we have different relationships with the people we work for. Sometimes certain people, just based on the way organizations work, get more attached to one manager or the other. So something happens, and management's not all on the same page as it relates to that. One thing that I'm blanking on his name right now, but we were talking on our podcast to the CEO of Snagajobs, and one of the challenges he says he thinks he sees a lot happening with the industry is that people are more loyal to the people that are below them. So like, I'm more loyal to my cooks than I am to the people that are next to me. So my other managers. So instead of having that loyalty, I think you need both. I don't think there's a one or the other. I think we have to have that culture of transparency where people can keep, bring things to the table like we talked about before, but then understanding what those things are. And I think you do have to, in a sense, have a baseline of this is what is acceptable and this is what's not.
Awesome. Kind of going back to what we said before, having those policies, having those standards, and documenting them so they're written down someplace. So when somebody is veering off course or not meeting the expectation, you have a document, a fixed something that they probably sign off on or should be signing off on the day that they get hired, saying, I agree to these expectations. So when they veer off, you have something to track their performance against, right?
Right. And I was talking with an organizational psychologist on Friday, I think it was, and she was talking about how, well, you need A players and B players and C players. And I'm diving more into that whole idea. A certain part of me thinks maybe you want all A players. But then the A players are going to leave and have their own kind of set of issues. But I don't think that when we talk about expectations, I don't think it's, all right, well, you aren't fast enough on the line, so we're going to have to let you go. I think that's where you say, all right, you're not fast enough on the line. Maybe we should put you somewhere else in the kitchen where we can better utilize the skills you have. So I think it's analyze the situation. What are the needs that should be met? If they aren't meeting them, is it a moral or is it a moral problem or an ethical problem, or is it something that they just can't get up to speed? And if they're good people, can we keep them around, put them somewhere else, or do we need to have a conversation and understand that their needs just aren't aligning with theirs?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think just like in life in general, right? Like in life, and we're not all going to grow up to be rocket scientists. We're not all the A player, outrageously capable person. We need that person that is going to sweep. We need that person that maybe doesn't really have a ton of ambition in life, but just wants to be able to wake up, do their job, go home, and have their separate life at home, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think when I think of A players, I think of not comparing each other, or not comparing your employees to each other, but getting each individual